A 2024 beginner's guide to Monster Hunter. That's what you clicked for, so here it is. We're going to be ditching our hammer and going obviously to a new character. Once you've created your new character, you'll be pushed into a cutscene, a little bit of walking, another cutscene, some cutscenes, a cutscene, and then it'll lead you right here to the pick your weapon screen. So here we are with the equipment box. We will be choosing our weapon here. For this playthrough, we will be using a weapon that I've never used before, but is a player favorite, the katana.
Are you sure about that?
Just because I think a lot of new players use the katana first, so you'll learn it at the same time that I will. We'll learn it together. Now, that being said, there is a lot to go over in this screen. First of which, obviously, is your weapon selection. Now, for you to select a weapon, it's going to be a little bit different. I had my weapon in mind. I knew which weapon I wanted. You may not, right?
Oh my gosh. What do I do?
So, one thing that you can do if you don't know how the weapon works or how it maneuvers is you can go to the weapon and you can press triangle. Doing this will give you a quick overview of how the weapon works and how it'll look when using it. Now, each one of these weapons will have a different positive and a negative, so a different drawback to them. For instance, the gun lance has a large amount of defense, I think the highest in the game, but sacrifices a lot of their mobility for that defense. Whereas the katana has, I wouldn't say zero defense, but no real defense, but has an extreme amount of mobility for that defense, right? So they can't really block, they can defend in other ways. One thing I do want to stress is when picking a weapon, you do want to know kind of a little bit what kind of build you are going to have in mind. So in this instance, I know that I'm going to be going for a Mushroomancer build, right?
Yeah.
So I know that I'll have a lot of defense, a lot of health, and a lot of health recovery items. And because of that reason, I know that I won't need my weapon to make up for that defense. So I'm going to go 100% attack. I would pick the greatsword, but I just think the katana is going to be a little bit more popular, and I do want to see how it performs, and I've never played with it before, as I said, so I do want to play with it at least one good time. Now, if we go to the right-hand side of the screen, you will see a few things, one of those being your stat list, right under your name and things like that. The first thing we'll talk about is your attack. It's pretty straightforward, right? Your attack is the maximum attack that you can have. Now, your attack can be manipulated a little bit by your sharpness and your affinity. Those are the two next things on the list. So your sharpness is going to dictate the amount of damage that your weapon can do. Yellow is always going to be 100%, and then green, I believe, is 105, and then like 115. But basically, yellow is 100%. It goes up from there and then down from there. Orange being 75%, and then red being 50% of your original attack damage. So you definitely don't want to ever get to red sharpness, and that kind of tells you how important sharpness is to your overall attack. Next on the list, we have affinity. So affinity is going to be your chances of getting a crit. Now, that's not the same as your crit damage, which is how much damage you get when you do get a crit. It's your chance of hitting a critical attack on a monster, right? So the more affinity you have, the more chance you get of getting a critical attack on the monster. Now, your elemental damage, that's a little bit... Now, your elements are right there. Just below that, you have fire, water, thunder, ice, and dragon. Now, these are your defensive stats. So your defensive stats are going to dictate how much, obviously, defense you have. I have 251 defense right now. Now, there's a bit of a calculation when it comes to how much of the monster's attack is going to come through, depending on your defense. It's like 80 by 80 times your defense or something like that. You can look up the calculation, but a simple way of putting it is that the more defense you have, obviously the less attack the monster does. It's pretty simple. Now, when it comes to your resistances, so pretty much the same thing. The more resistance you have to an attack, the less that attack will build up. So monsters have elemental attacks just like you do, and the more you get attacked by a monster, the more that element will build up.
It didn't work! Yo!
Now, the more resistance you have, the harder it is for that element to build up and for it to do any type of elemental damage to you. Usually, you don't have to worry about this too much. It only comes into play when you're trying to like min-max your damage and stuff like that. Other than that, as long as you have really good attack and really good defense, it's not something you have to worry about too much. Obviously, though, if you're having a problem with the monster, you want to go ahead and take a look at this, because if that monster happens to be like a Kieran and your versus Thunder is -4, then maybe you might want to take a look at that, right? All right, and you might be wondering, like, where am I getting all these stats from? I just have all these stats and I don't necessarily know where they're coming from. Well, there are a few ways to tell where your stats are coming from, but most of them are going to be coming from your gear. So let's take a look at your gear. So we're going to press on your gear, and then it's going to go straight to that gear item, and then that gear item stats are now in the right hand side. It's no longer all of your stats, it's just that gear item. So that defense 50, you know that 50% or 50 of that defense stat that we had from before is coming from your helmet. So if we were to change that to this helmet, you can see that that has 2. Obviously this helmet is not as good. So we have 50 coming just from your helmet, and then we have the fire resistance and the ice resistance and stuff like that. And you can see just below that we have what's called skills, and we'll get to that in just a second here. All right, another way to get to that information if you weren't sure. So you see that we're here where we were before, just kind of looking at our general stats. You can press R2 twice. It'll get you to just that item's information, and you can go down without actually clicking on it. Just another way to get to it, a little bit of a faster way, but this way doesn't, I mean, if you want to change the item, you'll still have to click in it. So kind of depending on what you want to do. Now, as I said, we'd get to the skills. Here they are. If you press R2 once, it'll get you to the skill screen. These are all of your available skills. Now, I know what you're thinking. What the hell do these skills mean? I mean, health boost, does that mean I have more health? Does that mean I get more health recovery? What does health boost mean? It could mean any number of things. Well, in order to figure that out, we're going to press the middle button. Once you press the middle button, it'll take you to your equipment skills. So the first screen is just going to be whatever skills are on that personal piece of equipment, right? If you press R1, then you can see all of your equipped skills. So looking at these skills just from this piece of equipment, we can see that from our helmet, we are getting 2 recovery up and 1 health boost. Right now, if you go to just your equip skills and you look at your health boost, it'll actually tell you the same information. You see there, it says that 1 of those points is coming from our helmet, 2 is coming from our trousers. So anytime you're looking up your skills and you're wondering, like, where am I getting these skill points from, or maybe you're wanting to change a piece of gear out, but you don't want to necessarily lose recovery. So you're like, man, I really want to change my helmet out, but I'm getting 2 recovery from that helmet. That's where things like jewels will come into play, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But you'll realize that jewels allow you to do things like move your stats around. And obviously we can't move stats around in our normal equipment. Like, there's no way for us to take the marathon runner from this vest and move it onto this vest here, right? Like, it just cannot happen.
But that's simply not possible.
Why not, you stupid bastard?
Or unless, as I said before, you have the jewels. So now when it comes to the gear that we have on, the game gives us some pretty high rarity gear in order to get us out of the low rank, pretty much the low and the high rank pretty quickly, and get us into master rank as quickly as possible. Because master rank is going to be where you're getting all the good gear, and it's going to pretty much restart your gear system. So none of the gear that you get in low rank or high rank will matter too much as soon as you get to master rank. Now, as I've never used the katana before, one thing you definitely want to do is speak to your housekeeper here and go to the training area. Alrighty, and obviously, again, this is not a weapons tutorial. However, there are some key things that you want to think about while you're in the training area that I want to go over. I did have a little bit of time to get used to my katana here. I'm obviously not a pro at it, but one thing you want to, or a few things I want to point out to you here. So on the left hand side, we see that we have a move list, or at least a crude move list. Is what you can think of this as. It's not a full move list, but it's a basically beginning moves. These are things that you can do just out of your normal stance, and usually a lot of them will combo into each other. You can see it change there, but we'll get into that in a second. All right, now again, I said usually they'll combo into each other. We've seen there that the spirit thrust doesn't combo into like any of the other ones, it doesn't seem like. Obviously, again, I could be wrong, but that's something you have to get used to as you're training. Now, no matter what weapon you're training on, this will be the same way. You'll have the move list, and just below it, you'll have a basic combo list. So to show you that you can do things like 4 triangles, right? So that gives you a basic combo list. Now, another thing that you'll notice while you're doing your training is that your left hand side, your move list is going to actually change depending on sometimes the moves that you do. So in this case, if I press R2, you see that it changes and gives me some other options that I can do. So I can do R2 into fade slash. I can do R2 into foresight slash. I can do R2 into spirit thrust. And then I can also do R2 into the special sheet. Now from the special sheet, there are some other moves that you can do, but it doesn't tell you there. You just kind of have to press buttons and figure it out. And it will be that way for some of the moves that you have. Now another thing that you'll want to pay attention to while you're in training is when you can use your clutch claw, and your slinger. Those two things are going to be super important. For example, I can use that after I do the R2. And then once I do that, it does a little bit more damage. With the hammer, it's super important to know when to use your clutch claw, because that's kind of the way you continue your combos and get the most damage. You do a combo, go into your clutch claw. There you go. Bye-yow. Boy, if you don't do a little bit of weakening to the animal's body parts or the monster's body parts and stuff like that, and then you continue, rinse, wash, repeat, right? So you definitely want to be aware of when you can clutch claw and when you can use your slinger ammo. All right, again, this is not a weapons tutorial, so we're gonna go ahead and get on out of here and get moving to some of the other things that I feel are really important that I think are missed by the newer players. Let's get right to it. All right, so this may seem small, but obviously you are going to want to speak to every single person who has something over their heads. If they have an exclamation point, especially. These are kind of like side quests or side stories, but they're extremely important to the overall story and your overall success when it comes to your meals and things of that nature. All right, so anything that they go over already in the game, I won't really go over, like your party members and stuff like that, how to start a quest. All that stuff is in the game as a tutorial, so I won't really go over that, but there's a lot of things that they don't really mention that I do want to go over. One of those things is your item management. So you definitely want to empty out all of your items in your ammo coatings if you're not using them, and then get all the items that you actually do need. So we know that we'll need potions, so we'll go ahead and fill those up, fill up our rations. We probably won't need full antidotes, but we'll fill those up. And then you're going to want to save your loadout. So I'm playing on PlayStation. In order to do that, I press start. I then press triangle to register my new loadout. This will save the loadout to our loadout 1. You can save or change the name if you want to, but I don't feel like it's necessary because they're already numbered. Sometimes it is though, like if you have one that's for hunting and if you have one that's for gathering, right? Those will be two different things. And there are times where you will go out just to gather. There are times where you should go out just to gather. This is one part of the game that I feel like new people miss a lot. And if there's one thing that I can tell you about this game, it's take a step back and enjoy it. All right, this is not Rise. You're not meant to like rush through this, get to the end game as soon as possible and then absolutely destroy things. You are meant to enjoy every aspect of this game. Now I did say obviously earlier that you want to get out of low rank and high rank as soon as possible, but that does not mean that you don't go on expeditions, that you don't go enjoy the hunts, and that you don't go and get used to your weapon. Yes, you want to do all of these things. They are very important to the game, and the game rewards you with different things depending on what you do. For example, you may get a recipe for going out and going fishing. And completing that investigation and stuff like that. And we will get into investigations and how to get recipes and how to get different ingredients and all that different stuff later on in this series. I am planning on making this an entire series, and we're just going to go through how it is to be a new character and get to a Mushroom-mancer build, and I will show you all why I'm doing Mushroom-mancer build. It is OP. There are very little other builds that can out heal and out buff you when it comes to the Mushroom-mancer. Even as one of those like flute or bagpipe people, it's hard for them to out buff you when it comes to being a Mushroom-mancer. It's insane. So we'll get to all of that future down the road and all those things, but for now we register our loadout. Again, you can rename it if you want. I will not. This is our base loadout for now. And this is what we will come back to every time, and you will see why I took away all the shells and all those things in a minute here. Let's get straight into our quest. All right, so we get some items in the supply box, and this is the main reason why you want to empty out all your ammo and coatings before you come here, because they're going to give you some, and some of these are really strong. So if you ever feel like you want to change to a ammo or a build that requires ammo, you can use all of these that you've saved up over time, and you don't have to go like creating them or trying to, you know, grind for them or anything like that. You'll just have them for later on. So I would take everything in here.
They're on the run. Don't let them get away.
Be sure to stop and get this mining outcrop when doing this mission, and I'll show you why in a second. Woo! Alright, so here we are at the smithy, and I'll show you now why I told you to mine that one outcrop earlier. Alright, so the smithy is obviously where you're going to be forging equipment, weapons, and upgrading your equipment and your weapons, as well as for your palico. You can see your stats over there on the right hand side, the same information that we spoke of earlier. It just kind of tells you there so that you know what stats you're upgrading or what stats you want to and need to upgrade and things like that. So let's go ahead and upgrade the equipment like they're making us do. We obviously can't forge anything right now. Cool, and then it'll take you into the defender weapon. So if you wouldn't have mined that outcrop, you may not have had enough ore to get one of these weapons. So this is why I was telling you to go ahead and mine that outcrop. So now, as you can see, every variation weapon will have a defender type of that variation, and it only costs 1 iron ore to make. So if we look at the difference between our iron katana and our defender katana, we have 429 attack, but we also have elemental blast, which we didn't talk too much about elemental damage earlier, and that was kind of on purpose. The reason for that is it's actually kind of complicated. So each element has a kind of different way that it affects your attack damage. Blast works up over time, and then once you get the full stack, it'll do a blast attack, which is usually for a set amount. In the higher ranks, it's 300. It could be something lower at these ranks, but basically the blast builds up over time, and then it does a blast attack. Whereas other elements, there's a super complicated formula that adds your attack and the body parts and all these other things. But basically, the more of that element you have, the more of that elemental damage you will have, and it depends on whether or not the monster is weak or strong to that element, whether or not you'll do more damage. That's kind of how you can think of it in a very base way, because it is kind of complicated to think about like different elements and stuff like that. Now, taking a look at your tree, this is usually the way that I go about building and upgrading weapons, because it shows you a graph of like what you can go with next, and if you have like an end goal in mind, you can be like, okay, I want one of these, so I know that I have to start off here, right? And a lot of times there will be trees where there's question marks and you have no idea what that tree is or how it's going to affect your weapon. Now, if there are trees that are question marks, that means you have not met the monster required to get that weapon. Once you meet the monster, whether you kill it or not, you will get the skill tree for it, so that you can kill the monster if you want to, and then or capture the monster if you want to, and then get the parts necessary to build that weapon. Now, something to take into consideration when you're looking at your weapons, don't just consider your attack, right? One thing to obviously consider that I spoke about earlier is your sharpness. So, for example, if we were to start off with just the regular 264 iron katana, right? And then we have the bone shotel. Now, in your mind, you might think, well, why would I ever pick the iron katana over the bone shotel when I have more attack? I have 297 attack there. It's all red right now because of the weapon we have equipped, but we're basically just comparing these two. So we have the 264 attack here, which you can see on the most right hand side, and then we have the 297. So why would I ever pick 264 over 297? But then you go and look at the sharpness. So we have a yellow sharpness there, and we have a yellow sharpness there. So you're like, okay, well then definitely I'm picking the bone tree if they have the same sharpness, right? There's absolutely no reason then for me to pick the ore tree. But then you look at the next one, we're still on some yellow sharpness there. As you can see, it's 330 attack but with yellow sharpness. And the next one here, which is the one that we have currently, the iron katana 2, it's 297, but you're now at green sharpness. You're now at 0.5% extra. So is that 0.5% extra worth it for you to not go with the the 300 damage or the 330 damage, right? So it's something that you kind of have to balance out and make the decision for yourself when it comes to what type of weapon you want, what type of damage you're doing, and what type of build you have, right? All of those things will tie into each other when it comes to like your overall build. So right now, again, we're going to go with the defender weapon. As you can see here, it has the blast damage and it has a very large green sharpness bar, which is very good for us because that means we can go a long time without having to sharpen the blade. All right, and then going down the line, you have upgrade equipment. Obviously, you go here, you pick I would sort by equipped equipment. That way you can obviously upgrade the equipment you have equipped, unless you're trying to upgrade something else and then equipped it, then obviously you can do that. Once you click on it, it'll pretty much take you to the same tree. Here, you can see that there are materials there that we don't know what they are. It's pretty much the same thing as the weapon. Anytime you have materials that you don't know what they are, it's more than likely because you haven't met that monster. However, there are times where the material required is in like a bone pile or an ore pile or something like that. So that could mean that you haven't gotten the material from one of those piles. Another thing that you can look at when it comes to figuring out what items it is and what items you need for that weapon is the picture. The picture of the rock there lets you know that it's more than likely going to be in an iron ore or one of those mining deposits. And the picture of animal bones lets you know that it's usually going to be out of a bone pile that you can find laying around. And then we have like down here, that's a picture of an animal. So usually that means, I believe that means it's going to be from like a large animal, but it's not like guaranteed. This is just to give you a hint as to where you can get those items. It's not like a guarantee, oh, this is what that is, right? Because you never know until you go and explore and get that item, which is why expeditions are so important. But again, if you don't want to go through that, you can always go to like Reddit or some, Monster Hunter help forum and figure out what they are that way. Now, when it comes to forging palico equipment, it's a little bit different. You'll need points. We don't have points right now because we haven't gathered anything. Again, gathering things from the local area is huge in this game. They want you to enjoy every little aspect of this game. So down there where it says required cost, those points you get through literally just picking up things in the on expeditions or while you're on hunts. So you can see very early on they're stressing the fact and the importance of just kind of enjoying the environment, walking through it, picking the flowers.
Look at this. This is an aspen. You can tell that it's an aspen tree because of the way it is.
Smelling the roses and all those things. Like, again, this is not one of those games where you just rush through it and you don't enjoy the little things. They want you to enjoy the little things because it adds up to the bigger things. Then you have next your bowgun. This is if you are a bowgun main. Again, I'm not going to say anything about any of the weapons. You pick whatever weapon you want. All these people want to give people shit about what weapons they use and what play style they have, and that's just not how I play video games. So you play whatever the fuck you want to play. This is how you customize your bowgun if you do want to be a bowgun main. This is how you customize your kinsects if you want to be a kinsect main. However you want to play the game, 100% up to you. Don't let anyone discourage you from playing any weapon you want to play. Fuck everybody, you paid for this game. Play it the way you want to play it. Alright, so the next quest we get is the Castodon Kerfuffle. You go ahead and get the quest from your handler, and then you come straight over here to eat. This is where we talk about the food screen. Now, this screen is extremely important. Do not skip eating. It would be a mistake, okay? It gives you multiple buffs. It buffs up your health, your speed. Like, there's so many buffs that you would be missing out on if you skip eating. Just don't do it. It's a huge mistake. Now, we're going to pay with money, okay? But it really doesn't matter what you pay with. Now, there's a lot to go over here. Let's start from the very left-hand side, and we will work our way to the right. Now, on the very left, you have ingredients. These are the ingredients that you have or are going to use in your meal. So basically, right now, we have no ingredients in our meal. We press X, and we pick the ingredients. Now, we have right next to that, the ingredients available. These are the ingredients available to you that you have either picked from expeditions or going on hunts, or that, as you can see, other people have gathered themselves on their accounts. Now, anytime you have a lobby full of people, those people's ingredients will show up in your ingredient list. Obviously, all of these I don't have personally because I haven't gone out there and I haven't done what I need to do to get those things. So it does often benefit you to eat in the lobby as opposed to eating at your campsite, because if I would have eaten at my campsite, I would only basically have these two meats, and that's pretty much it out of this entire list, right? And then we wouldn't have many of these fish either, and pretty much all of those we wouldn't have. We wouldn't have any of those. So our only options would be a couple of pieces of meat. So you can see how dramatically it changes your options when eating in the lobby as opposed to eating in the campsite. Now, what do these mean? So when it comes to buffs, the meat always gives an attack buff, the fish always gives a defense buff, and the vegetables always give an elemental resistance buff. Now, what does that mean? That means that if I were to pick 2 pieces of meat, regardless of the color of the meat, I then get a small attack buff, right? And it shows you there when you're picking the second piece that you will get the small attack buff. If we're moving now to like the third mini screen here, we have meal effects. So you can see we have the health and stamina are going up 10 and 25, and then your palico's health is going up 4. So if we would have no meat at all, it would have no health or stamina boost. If we have a not fresh piece of meat, then it gives us a 25 stamina boost with no health. And then if we have a fresh piece of meat, which is the meat that's shining right there, it gives us a 25 stamina boost plus 10 health plus our 4 for our palico health. So you definitely want to pick fresh food as much as you can. Obviously, it won't always be an option, and it won't always fit the meal that you're trying to create, but you want to do it as often as possible. So now, I know that you're noticing that each of these meat sections has a different color. We have red, blue, yellow, purple, and orange. We have red, blue, orange, purple, and yellow, or red, blue, yellow, purple, and off-white.
I'm the last crown in the box you see, and the color that they assigned to me is this!
I don't know, whatever you want to call those colors, we have those colors there, right? So if you want to know basically what these do or what buffs that you can get, you'll just press the middle button. Now, the color coding works regardless of if you're picking meat, fish, or vegetables. So for example, if I were to pick 1 red meat and 1 red fish, I now have feline polisher, if you can see down there in the food skills. We don't have any effects, and we only had we don't have any ingredient effects because we didn't pick 2 of the same type of food, so we didn't pick 2 meats, so there was no effect given to us, right? The meat is what gives us the attack up, not the red. So the red gives us the feline polisher. Now, in order to get both of those things, we would obviously want to get 2 meats, both of them being red, right? This will allow us to get the feline polisher and the attack up small, as well as giving us the 25 the 25 stamina, the 10 health, and the 4 palico for having 1 piece of fresh food. Now, anytime you cannot get all 3 food skills in your meal, you will be given what's called daily skills. So these skills change every day. They are random. Sometimes they're really good, sometimes they're kind of crap. But usually you want to pick your own skills. However, if you cannot, you do have the daily skills. So in this example, we have feline polisher, but then we also have the daily skill feline backer and feline weakener. So those are the skills that were given us because we cannot create other skills with our meal. And for the most part, if you look at all of these skills, they're pretty much all good. None of them are really bad in any way. The only ones that you want to watch out for are the artillery, because if you don't have anything that's artillery, then you wouldn't need to increase the power of your normal shots if you're not shooting anything, right? You don't need ballista and sticky ammo to increase if you're not shooting anything. So these are the only ones that you kind of want to watch out for. All of these other ones are pretty decent, and it doesn't really matter which ones you get. So, you know, unless you're going for like a specific build that requires like feline moxie, you don't really need to pay attention to it too much. Just kind of make sure that you don't get artillery. I myself, I like to make sure that my food is complementary to my build, so that everything kind of works in tandem together.
Now, now! Star to retreat to its nest to remember it.
Alright, so once you finish that quest and defeat the Castodon and the Jagras, which should be relatively easy if you followed me up into this point, because your weapon should be pretty overpowered, then we will go on our first expedition. But before we do that, I do want to introduce you to a couple of things. The first thing, we already were introduced to the ecological research. So we're going to turn in our level for the Jagras. And then we're going to look at the monster field guide to see what I was talking about earlier when it comes to their physiology. So as you can see here, it'll tell you the elements that they have. It'll tell you the elements that work good against them, and it'll also tell you the ailments that work good against them. So elements and ailments are two different things. As you can see, poison, sleep, paralysis, blast, and stun, those are all the ailments that you can add to a monster. Usually those come in the way of your weapon. And then you have the elements, which again usually come in the way of your weapon as well, but also in your equipment stats. But looking here, you see you have the 3 breakable pieces on the Great Jagras. The head, the belly, and the forearms are all breakable. And then as you level up, it'll tell you what you can get from those breakable parts, which again is really good when you're farming for parts. Next, we're going to go into the provisions manager. So the provisions manager is basically who you want to see before you go on an expedition. They're going to give you a goal when you're out on an expedition, and they're, in my opinion, just as important as the handler when it comes to getting items and things that you need for your weapons and your equipment. So as you can see, we just got a new critical bounty. Critical bounties are going to be the most important bounties that you can do in the game. These are kind of like side quests or side stories that allow you to open up different parts of the map and different things in the map that help you with your monster hunts, such as Grimlikins, which we'll get to later, and it allows you to open up different ingredients and things of that nature. So a lot of your ingredients and a lot of the different things that help you boost yourself inside of a hunt are going to come from here. Now with the first round, we'll just go ahead and get all of the requests that they have, because they have the perfect 6 for the 6 that we can take. Usually though, I would say pick the ones that are going to be automatically done. So if you know that you're going to go hunt a large monster right now, then why not pick the large monster one and get a free armor spear, right? So these ones don't matter as much as the criticals. They're just kind of giving you little extra rewards and extra points that we talked about earlier that will help you upgrade your palico and stuff like that, in order for you to do those things. The critical, these are super important. Make sure that you're getting these done. And then the limited, you know, they are what they are. They're not as important as either the as either the critical or the registered. So a few of the criticals we will start on this expedition. These are the most critical. These are the most important criticals that you can do. These ones that I'm about to show you right now. So when you're going on expeditions, the right hand side here is extremely important. It's going to tell you, for one, the monsters that are there. Okay, cool, whatever. But the locale info and the field researcher info are the 2 most important things that you'll be using this panel for, right? So the locale info, will see that we have flourishing mushrooms. That means usually that you have a higher chance of getting a rare mushroom item. So you want to go for the mushrooms and stuff like that. And then the weather will be clear. The field researcher. Now this is a side story that we'll talk about here in a second. But the lynian field researcher is, in my opinion, the most important field researcher. If you don't do any of the other ones, at the very least do that one. Let's go ahead and start and see where you can find the lynian researcher. All right, so when you first load in, you're going to load in at this campsite. We're going to go straight here and take this path down the left hand side here. Obviously on your map you can see the exclamation points, so you can just follow those. They are there for a reason. Please follow all of them and talk to all of these researchers.
Hello.
So there's the lynian. Oh, quick tip. One thing that I like to do at least is change the health and stamina from dynamic to fixed, so that you always know how much health and stamina you have. And you're never guessing. Otherwise it only comes up when it's low, which is not good. All right, so this is the piscine or piscine. I don't know how you say it. I think it's piscine. This one you'll want to talk to twice. That way you can get the critical bounty. Once you get the critical bounty, you can actually fulfill it by fishing in this spot. Boom. See? Pink Paraxis. So you can get multiple. There are multiple in this area here. If you don't get it the first time, just keep trying. There are different types of fish in here, so you can just keep fishing for different types. So we got the gourmet shroom caps that the cat asked for. If you spoke to the cat when they had the exclamation point over their head, they would have given you the quest for the shroom caps. That's where you can get them in those types of shroom caps that I just picked up right there. And this is the endemic life researcher. Again, speak to them twice to get the quest. So the woodland pteryx is actually that thing right there. Again, you can go ahead and complete the quest. There you go. You can complete the quest by just capturing one of those. That's right near the endemic researcher. So you can pretty much get those done immediately. All right, now before you go up into the campsite, my suggestion would be to come over here and get this Grimlican doodle. There are going to be multiple doodles up in these trees, and once you get it to at least the first bar right there, the flies will lead you to more doodles, which will eventually lead you to the Grimlicans, and then they will give you a quest which you will have to complete. So there's another doodle here, and I think there's one more over there. Yeah, so we'll get all of the ones up in this tree, and then that'll allow us to get it to the point where our scout flies can scout out more if we want them to. All right, now let's get up here and get this campsite. Alright, so at this point you can decide to hunt the Kulu-Yaku or not. It really doesn't matter. You'll be hunting them one way or another later. I'm going to go ahead and get the hunt out of the way, and then we're going to head back to the campsite, and then we're going to go over a few more things here. So I'll be right back. Alright, as you can see, we got some new ingredients there for turning in those bounties. So that's one of the main ways that you will get ingredients. Now, we have not unlocked the plant growing center yet, so I will get into that in a later video. But for now, I do think we're done. This video will be more of the main guide, right? It'll have more of the main things to start off with, or how to get you on a good path with a new character, because I feel like a lot of people start off wrong, and it kind of makes it harder for them later on in the mid game and stuff like that. So if you get a really good start, it helps you out later on. What we will do in the next video when we continue is we will try to open up the botanical gardens as well as continue the story. So basically what you're going to do from here is you're just going to continue the low rank and continue to grind through it. It's not really a grind, honestly. It's fun. You'll do the Zoro Magdaros storyline, and then you'll get to like high rank, and then pretty much the same thing there. You'll grind through that. Now, the only thing that I want to mention is that you do want to go on expeditions. The reason you want to do that is because you want to continue or further on the Lynian researcher storyline. The way that you'll do that is by finding the Grimlican doodles that I showed you earlier, and then getting that maxed out, and then finding the Grimlicans themselves and letting your Palico talk to them, and then kind of just going from there. Once you find them, you'll speak to the Lynian researcher, and he'll kind of give you like a guide on how to continue from there. Now, we will be doing that in this series. I'm basically just going to continue this series like normal. We're just going to go through the story mode, and I'm going to walk you guys through what it would be like to be a new character. So next time we're going to go on our next hunt, which looks like we're going to need to speak to the handler about what that's going to be. Yeah, we're just going to have some fun with the katana here, or the longsword rather. So yeah, if you liked, leave a like, subscribe, do all the things. This has been Yata Gaming. We will see you in the next one. Other than that, stay safe, be blessed, and I'm out.